beginning to look a lot like frogmen everywhere we go.
So what should we... Hey, you remember the thing Brent never did?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the Games That Made Us podcast. I'm Brent. I'm here with my friend Kirk. Say hi, Kirk.
What's up?
And as always, we're joined by our good friend Benny. Say hi, Benny.
Oh my god, it's me. I'm so excited for this.
Yeah. Oh, dude.
I'm stoked.
All right, so normally we do like, hey, what have you been playing today kind of thing. Let's just real quick, we'll talk about what we're drinking, and then we'll get into the game. So I think we're all very excited to talk about this game. Benny, what are you drinking, buddy?
I am drinking a Kona Big Wave. It is apparently liquid aloha.
It is also a big fucking wave.
It's
You have
stout.
You have...
This is
Boom! Here's my beer.
This is a real gamer fuel right here.
Jesus. It's excellent. All right, Kirk, what about you, buddy?
I just realized I grabbed the wrong can out of the fridge.
Oh, no!
Yeah, I was planning on drinking the what I had earlier, the Prairie Artisan Ales slush. Mm-hmm. But I grabbed a Two Hoots hard iced tea instead because I was too busy trying to get back to the table in time. So I might have to go run and fix that, or not. I don't know.
Do it.
Hey, no one will blame you
Keep
for
talking.
grabbing a beer.
Because while you do that, Brent can talk about what he's drinking. What are you drinking?
So hold on. Oh, just for you guys. I am drinking...
We're the opposite of ASMR.
Yes.
We will hurt your ears.
This is gonna sound inappropriate, but I promise it's only sort of Lick Branch Lager, which is very hard for me to say, which is a Kentucky Common, and it's from Springfield Brewing Company, which, so my family and I, we went down to Little Rock, Arkansas for my kids' spring break, and while we were on the way down there, we stopped at Springfield Brewing Company in Springfield, Missouri. If you guys get a chance, if you're ever in the Ozarks or that part of the world, highly recommend stopping off at Springfield Brewing Company. It's a great meal, excellent beer. They also have a distillery attached. Earlier today, the guys were trying a rye whiskey that was finished in sherry casks. Same building, same location. My heartiest endorsement for Springfield Brewing Company.
And there wasn't like any like hillbillies like shunning you as you came out the door.
Well, that's typical for my life generally. I've pretty much learned to just sort of drown that out.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, like I just kind of walk down the street and they're like, shun the non-believer.
Yeah. Look at him and his fancy beer and his fancy food.
Except no one listening has ever seen Brent and would realize that most people are probably like, I'm going to criticize. Oh, I'm not.
I've decided not to upset the troglodyte.
Yeah, he'll pound you into the ground like a goddamn railroad spike in a cartoon. Just wham. Probably do it.
My wife regularly tells me like, you forget that people are afraid of you.
Right? No, and that's something like it was hilarious. I was talking to so I have a 10 and 7-year-old daughter. The 7-year-old's been on the show, so you guys should know that. But my 10-year-old was talking about one of her friends coming over, and I was mentioning, I was like, I think she's a little scared of me, and my 10-year-old was like, no, why would she be scared of you? Like, that's so silly. And I'm like, because I'm gigantic. Like, I'm a massive, beardy person, and most people are rightly scared of me before they get to know me. And so it was great. She's like, no, I'm going to ask my friend. She's not scared of you. And she came back the next day, and she's like, she said she's scared of you. It's like, yeah, you know me. You know I'm not an asshole, but that's not everybody's immediate impression. I've definitely had, like, women cross the street to get away from me as I'm, like, walking down a street late at night, and it's like, I know, I'm like Frankenstein's monster if he was a little bit beardier and, more Nordic.
mean, the neck bolts were your choice, Brent.
That's true. Well, it was the 90s. We were all doing it. 90s were a weird time. All right. Well, hey, normally we do a little bit more pre-show, but we're all, I think, super excited to get into this one. We were upstairs getting ready for the podcast, and we were all kind of sitting around like, let's just dive in because this is a really great game. We're going to talk today about Chrono Trigger. This game came out in, is it 96? 95?
I believe it's 97.
Oh, 97.
Oh, wait. Am I
That
totally
can't be.
wrong?
That's
I think it's
super
95. It's 95. I'm almost
All right.
positive.
All right, we're gonna wait for the official arbitration. We're gonna ask the internet.
Why have I done this to myself?
I'm leaving this all in.
I was doing a bunch of research about this. 1995, indeed, it was.
Okay, all right, it's 1995.
My
In the
phone-
year of our Lord,
my
1995.
My phone auto-corrected the Chrono Trigger. What the fuck? What have I been typing into my phone lately?
Necrotic Trigger.
What? Yeah, how did
Chrono
you come to Chronic Trigger, and how did I turn into Borat as I declared
It's
the year of...
1995.
Very nice.
Very nice. Okay, so 1995.
Oh, God.
By Squaresoft. Came out originally on the Super Nintendo.
And this is before the merger of Square and Enix.
Although
They were still competitors at the time.
Absolutely. Although, I will say, I have a pet theory that this game was one of the first chinks in the armor of those two beginning to merge.
I think there's a lot to suggest that was the case. Or if this wasn't a generative action of that happening, it was at least a symptom of it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Chrono Trigger, 1995, originally on the Super Nintendo. Since then, it's come out on every console, basically. It's been on the PlayStation 1. It's been on the Nintendo DS. There was actually a project to port it to the Game Boy Advance, which I'm very glad didn't come through, just because of, as much as I love my Game Boy Advance, the sound on that. I think we learned from Final Fantasy VI that would have been not great. And then...
And that would have been a, spoiler alert, major problem for this game.
Yeah. Nintendo DS, and then Square has this weird theory that Nintendo doesn't share, where they have these games, and they have people who like them and want to give them money for the games. So what they do, what Square does, and this is pretty radical, is they make those games available for fucking purchase, Nintendo, so you can buy them with your money. So it's available on Android, it's available on iOS, it's available on Steam. So let's do so this game was brought to us by Benny. And I liked how we did the last episode, where we kind of started with like our initial impressions, where we first came to this game. So Benny, do you want to tell us a little bit about like why this became a game that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. Frankly, it was an accident.
Yeah.
So it would have been closer to like, kind of like the previous game we played, right around like the 1999, 2000 kind of time period.
Yeah.
I would have been in middle school, and a local pawn shop within walking distance of me. I just happened to have enough money to pick up a Super Nintendo console, and they were selling cartridges for $2, $3, $4, $5 a pop.
Right.
And I picked up Chrono Trigger because there's fantastic art on the cover. And I was like, there's a dude with a sword and a girl throwing fire and like a crazy monster. And I can afford $4.
Right.
Which is going to hurt a lot of you deeply to hear that I paid $4 to buy Chrono Trigger.
That's impossible.
Right.
And I took it home and I played it, and frankly, it was probably the first JRPG I ever played. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't understand the mechanic. I'd never played Final Fantasy. I'd never played any of that. The turn-based mechanic I'd never played before, and so I utterly goofed my way through probably the first eighth of the game.
Yeah,
figuring out how that worked. I had no art book or no manual, no box.
Did. Like
anything.
Everybody bought. This was so the era of buying games used or renting them, and having games that were intended to have the manual with them, intended to have all the feelies with them, and yet never having those.
Yep. People just almost instinctively disposed of those things, much to my chagrin these days.
Which apparently was such a cultural thing, because Japanese shit is always complete in box when you get it. I don't know why Americans hate paper so much.
And so I
join us for episode 10.
Supplemental. Why do Americans hate paper?
Like, there used to be a gaming podcast, and it just got weird.
Yeah.
I usually liked them, and they got political.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Go for it, man. Sorry.
It was a game that kind of... I never sat on my laurels with it. In fact, I think I beat it. I think I just played it little by little for a long time.
Yeah.
And it gets into you a little bit. It's got moments and elements that just stick with you. Like you can't forget specific moments in the plot. There are sounds and music that will be forever with you. And it's got simple but unforgettable gameplay too. Everything about this game, even to this day, measures up to retrospectively all of the accolades that it got throughout time. It's like when you look up this game, it has been on top 100 lists, and oftentimes in like the top 5 or 10 of those top 100 lists.
Yes.
On dozens of top tier publications like your IGNs, your GameSpots, and your Electronic Gaming Monthly, and like the online and print publications. Since its release, it's been routinely praised.
Yeah.
And it's hard for a game this old to maintain that. So there's something intangible about it that is lasting, because new players will continue to play it and find something worth noticing in it. So it's no surprise that even as a kid, I didn't know what the fuck I was playing, that it had an impact on me.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, I think we're going to have mostly positive things to say about this. But yeah, no, I agree. It's a game that whenever in life, that's called foreshadowing. Whenever in life you came to it, it does make a big impact. Kirk, what about you, man?
As I've mentioned in the podcast a bunch of times, I didn't really have too many consoles growing up, and I definitely didn't have a Super Nintendo, but almost all my friends did.
Yeah.
And this is another one of those games where I feel like, or at least in my circle of friends, this was a game where if the household had a Super Nintendo, they had this game. Just like Super Mario World and Super Metroid, fucking Chrono Trigger. Like everybody had it.
Yeah.
So that's how I ran into it at first initially. Of course, I was really young at the time, and JRPGs really, I think at least at that point in time, weren't really geared towards a young male Western audience.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So I didn't really get it the first time I ever played it as a young kid. Then later on in college, when I still didn't have a Super Nintendo, I played it on emulator, and that's where I finally beat it for the first time. But since then, I've played it on multiple. Well, actually, no, I take that back. In college, I did have Final Fantasy Chronicles.
Okay.
So yeah, and for the listeners, the Final Fantasy Chronicles for the PlayStation had Final Fantasy and Chrono Trigger on it.
Yeah.
But it unfortunately played like shit because it had like load times between each fight. But that's how I ran into it. And there are some things that I don't like about the game, Brant. Like,
oh sure,
like that was one of them. Like depending on which version.
Oh god.
Like if you had to deal with that load, like it just ruins the fucking game for you.
Well, and I think Square/Squaresoft/Square Enix has this wonderful habit of managing to take their wonderful games and create a C+ version of them over and over and over again. They're like, oh yeah, let's never release like the definitive like perfect version of our game. Let's only ever break it just slightly more in weird ways while fixing things we broke the last time. So no, I think that's totally fair. So for me, I had the opposite experience. I had no knowledge of Square or Final Fantasy or Chrono Trigger or JRPGs or any of that. Like I mentioned on our Baldur's Gate episode, I didn't know any of that shit until like, I don't know, 10 years ago. All of that shit, I was like, oh yeah, I guess that's the thing people do. Like, I don't know.
It's just total Knives Chow over here. I didn't know there was such a thing as good music until yesterday.
But yeah, so like I remember there being like, there was a standee for Chrono Trigger in the Funko Land in Dallas when I was a kid. And I was like, kind of like you were saying, Benny, with like, I was like, oh, that guy's cool. He's got spiky hair. Yeah. And I was like, that looks neat. But I didn't know anybody. Like, I had the opposite experience of, like, Kirk, when you were talking about, like, everybody who had a Super Nintendo had one. I didn't know anybody that had this game, or Final Fantasy 2 or 3, 4, and 6, for our Japanese and American listeners, respectively.
So many of them.
Yeah, all zero of our Japanese listeners. Let me translate for you. It was certainly a game that I remembered the artwork for, but I also remember the artwork for Balls 3D and Brutal Paws of Fury. Like, yeah, there were a lot of video game art. There was a lot of video game art that I remember, but it certainly wasn't anything I played. And if you would have told 10-year-old me, or even like 15-year-old me, oh, okay, so it's a game, there's menus. When it, like, oh, you want to do something, you go through menus, I would have been like, this sounds stupid, dumb, I'm gonna go kill this guy with a sword. Yeah. That's not even in a game. I was just murdering people on the streets.
Why does young Brent sound like a gruff 60-year-old man?
It was all the cigarettes. It's like, 13, I was like smoking 2 packs of Marlboro Cools a day.
Working in a coal mine.
Yeah. That sounds dumb. Now get out of my way. I gotta go drive truck.
Yeah. Gotta go clear a fence row and drink a bologna sandwich before I beat my wife.
Drink a bologna sandwich.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
You ain't got no teeth left.
I stand by what I said.
And that was young Brent.
Yes, and that was young Brent. But no, I certainly remember the art being around, but I didn't know anybody who played it. And honestly, and this is, it's so weird because like this podcast is the child of COVID. Because in 2020, I was sitting there with nothing to do, and my oldest daughter was like, came up and jumped into bed next to me as I was sitting on my phone playing Turtles in Time on some like shady emulator website. She's like, that looks cool. Does? like you like a thing that I like? You're supposed to already hate me. This is I'm not familiar with this emotion that you're showing. Is it respect? I'm not fully parsing this. And both my girls started very quickly like getting into Super Nintendo stuff that I was showing them. But I didn't have anything. I didn't have a Super Nintendo anymore. Like, all of my old gaming stuff was gone, either because it had been stolen, I'd sold it for music equipment when I was young and thought I had musical talent. I don't.
Flood.
Or the flood. Yeah, I had a flood that knocked out most of the rest of my stuff. So everything that I've ever owned from when I was a kid is gone. Right, I have none of my childhood memories. They've all been destroyed or sold or turned into a landfill.
It's like making lyrics for our Seeger song.
Now I'm gonna pull out my acoustic guitar.
He's gonna make one hell of a banger now.
I think this is an A minor. this song, but no. So my kids came and they started getting really into it. I was like, well, fuck yeah, these games are great. And so we bought a Raspberry Pi, and I built like a RetroPie gaming console for my oldest. And we started going through and playing all these Super Nintendo games. And I was like, I'm sure there's stuff I missed. I'm sure there's Genesis and Super Nintendo games that I missed when I was a kid. And I found this YouTube channel, SNES Drunk. And my kids and I started watching him, and he was like, oh yeah, my favorite game of all time is this game, Chrono Trigger. And I wound up playing through the DS version. And I was like, oh my god, like, it absolutely blew my mind. I'm not a JRPG guy. I've played many others since then. I don't enjoy them in general. This game, though, it's the game that kind of turned that light bulb on over my head. Although I will say, and like I think we can transition into gameplay, one of the things I find interesting about Chrono Trigger is that it doesn't follow the sort of standard JRPG template for gameplay.
Yeah.
And to get into a little bit of like just what the basic gameplay looks like, it is a top-down JRPG. You're walking around, you're collecting a party that you can transition out. You have a party with a max of 3 characters, and you're fighting battles with the goal of getting experience points to level up your characters, as well as points to get special moves, which we'll talk about in a second. You're also getting money, and you're getting potions and things like that. As with most JRPGs, there's also the equipment side of things, where you're trying to get better and better equipment for your characters, which has effects in terms of combat. But one of the things that I find interesting about this game is that it has an option to kind of allow you to turn off or on the turn-based nature of the combat. The game calls it active versus wait.
Active time battle, ATB versus a wait system.
Yeah. And in an active battle, it operates a little bit more like an action RPG. It's still menu based. You're still picking the actions that you want your party to take, but it's not. It's not the enemies aren't just passively sitting there and waiting for you to take your turn. You need to get to it as quickly as you can, or you'll miss your spot in the rotation.
Exactly. They will not wait for you.
Yeah.
And that's in the original version. I can't remember if they change how they present that to you in the DS version, but the default is active time battle in the original version of the game. Yes. So
I think all versions.
You're intended to fight against things that will not wait for you to make a decision.
Right. And one thing that I swear I'm not trying to start a fight, but I did think it was hilarious because this popped into my head as I was playing through the other day. I was sitting there, I was like, oh yeah, so what it does is it's a turn-based game, but it kind of obfuscates the turns. So you could kind of forget what the actual order of the turn was, and you might miss it. And I'm like, what role-playing game does this remind me of? Kind of reminds me of Baldur's Gate a little bit in the combat system, where it's kind of obfuscating the turn order and shit like that. And I was like, huh, yeah, that's what it reminds me of.
No, I've been pretty vocal, though, that I play this on wait.
I do too.
Yeah, I played on wait. There is no
Yeah. No, I 100% play this as a turn-based JRPG on wait, which is the other mode, which basically makes it exactly like the Final Fantasy style, where you're just going through an order that's predetermined. There's status effects that your characters can get that will push them down in the order or reduce the number of turns that they get per round. But yeah, by flipping it over to wait, you are turning it into a straight turn-based JRPG. which I actually prefer.
But those stats effects still will work in the weight too. Like you can even though it's weight, you can get multiple attacks before, or less attacks depending on what's going on before it's the enemy's turn.
Yeah, I mean your turn order and the speed with which your initiative becomes like your next turn comes around, your initiative is based on your character's speed attribute.
Okay. Which makes sense. Yeah. The other things that I think are unique or at least interesting innovations with this game versus if you've played any of the other JRPGs of this era are, first off, there are no random battles. Like if you're walking around the overworld or if you're walking around in particular areas, you're not going to just suddenly see a dissolve fade and then like, oh shit, there's 5 slimes in front of me and now I've got to fight them. The enemies all appear on the screen, and it is possible in most but not all cases to avoid them. If you don't want to fight a fight, you can walk around.
Sometimes they'll ambush you, and of course you have boss fights that are not optional, but it feels very dynamic.
Yes, it definitely. If I'm comparing it in terms of like which other game series from this era and nation, it feels more like the Mana series than it feels like the Final Fantasy series in a lot of ways.
Even a lot of art comparisons between like Secret of Mana and Chrono Trigger.
Absolutely. And I was actually watching. I think it was the Gaming Historian had a YouTube documentary on the rapid turnaround with the Square team on the development of this Final Fantasy VI and Secret of Mana, and how a lot of the Secret of Mana ideas kind of bled into Chrono Trigger. You'll see that as you play through the game.
Yeah.
The other thing that is and this will be my last, like, hey, this is a thing to know. The other thing that is unique to Chrono Trigger versus other JRPGs of the time is the whole dual and triple tech system. Now, there's definitely been other JRPGs that have this, but I think Chrono Trigger maybe does it better or leans into it more. Each of your characters will have access to different techs, different like magic attacks, basically. And they'll acquire more, but they'll also acquire dual and triple techs that will take up a turn for either 2 or 3 of your members, but will do significantly more damage to the enemy. And particularly if you're fighting a boss battle, there's certain boss battles, particularly late in the game, that if you are not using your dual and triple techs, you just realistically, you're not going to win them.
Either you're not going to win, or it's going to take forever to win.
7,000 years.
Yeah, and you're going to be depleting your supply of curative items. And
yes.
And while that's not usually a problem, it's going to become expensive.
Yeah. And like the hey, if you guys are at home are playing games that made us bingo, and you are looking for your Brent doesn't immediately understand a key part of the game spot on the board, which I feel like is the center. Yeah, I feel like that's bingo.
The free.
Yeah, that's the free space. I played through about 3/4 of this game the first time without realizing that like dual and triple techs were like significantly better. And I was like, oh, but that burns 2 people's turn. I just use all the single techs. And so, yeah, I got to, I think, Zeal the first time.
Oh, wow.
Using nothing but single techs and attacks and items.
Jeez.
And by that time, it was practically impossible for you to continue without major grinding or using double and triple techs.
Oh, and I did grind. That's the other thing I was going to say. Thank you, because that brings it back around. It's the only other thing that I wanted to say, gameplay-wise, that makes this game unique. Because we could describe what a JRPG is. I think you guys probably know what a JRPG is. The other thing is there's very little grinding in this game. If you just go through the game as intended, from start to finish, and it's pretty linear. If you just go through this game as intended and you don't dodge too many fights, you pretty much go into the fights that it's obviously intended for you to take, you'll arrive where you need to be at about the level that you need to be at.
Definitely. It is one of the potential criticisms, and this one's subjective.
Yeah.
But one of the potential criticisms that I will even acknowledge, even this being also my favorite game, is that it could be construed as a little bit too easy.
And as somebody who's bad at everything, I really liked that. I was like, yes, just let me cruise to the end. I just want to see the end.
Definitely subjective, because the experience is not suffering until you succeed in this game. That's never intended to be part of the experience.
Yeah.
That might be part of the story, you could argue, but...
Absolutely. Absolutely. Kirk, do you have anything that you want to add on the gameplay?
Just like, because it is so closely reminiscent of Final Fantasy games, you know, knowing what you know now and its relation to Final Fantasy games, and how this game works. When you see, like, at the end of a battle, when you win money, when you see the letter G, do you guys think gold or do you think gil?
We talked about that. I know what it's supposed to be, but I can't help but backfill it in my memory with gil. Yeah. I think at least the original translation uses gold at some point in the text, but that doesn't matter that much to me.
As somebody who, like, this was my first Squaresoft RPG that I finished, I was just like, oh, G is gold. I'm bringing over CRPG background. I'm like, oh yeah, well, in Icewind Dale, it would be gold, so it's gold, right? So yeah, no, that was my first thought on it. Boy, I tell you what, actually, the first like Final Fantasy game that I got fairly far into was 12.
Okay.
Because of the podcast, and so I was playing through that, and I was like, what the fuck is a gil? I think I knew a guy named Gil. I think I pantsed a guy named Gil one time.
You're actually in your own personal purgatory for that.
Yeah.
And now you're just being punished for pantsing Gil, and now it's coming back.
It's gonna be nothing but my own personal purgatory is just nothing but playing Final Fantasy games till the end of time. It's like, here's Crystal Chronicles, you motherfucker.
As good as they are, that would become torturous.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, before we get off gameplay, it's worth noting that in terms of comparative games, like from like the same genre, let's say, this game in subtle ways plays very well. Like when you play on an original Super Nintendo, for example, it controls very smoothly. It plays nicely. Like your characters. You don't need a sprint button in a JRPG, but you get one. Nevertheless, you can run faster.
You need it in this game.
Yeah,
that's true.
God, the fucking rat.
Oh yeah, that's true.
The rat in the fucking. Oh my god, I hated that motherfucker.
I just have it memorized.
Well, that's fair. Yeah, look, it took me like 6 tries to catch that motherfucker. And I have to like leave the room and come back. So yeah,
it's a subtle element of a game where the control scheme, because it is, you're doing a lot via menus. You're selecting your attacks and everything via menus. You do not pick your placement on the field of battle specifically, although placement does matter because you have area of effect attacks that affect specific areas.
Yes.
But you do not choose that. And the game is pretty good about selecting where your characters end up, in any given encounter. Yeah. But I have always thought, and in Baldur's Gate, I brought it up, I think the way that you interact with the game itself physically, like how, I don't know, I have dumb fingers, and like, and being able to easily and comfortably control things is meaningful to me.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And like a subtle thing that you mentioned was like the placement of characters and stuff. And one of the things that I remember from playing this the first time and was how dynamic the placement of characters, both the enemies and your party characters, is on the field. Because everybody moves around. If an enemy is attacking you, they'll literally move to where you are and attack you. But in like Final Fantasy VI, if that happens, then they return to a static line. And then you've still just got a line of your party and a line of the enemies. In Chrono Trigger, the fact that characters are moving around to do things is dynamic. Makes different status effects or different attacks possible or impossible based on where they've moved on the field. And that it just makes it feel much more like an action RPG, even though it is indisputably like a turn-based game.
Yeah, so you have attacks that may affect a circular area and a limited circle. So you have the option to select which enemies you're going to prioritize with damage. You know, maybe there's a lower priority enemy that you would rather exclude.
Yeah.
The attack may be a cone or it may be a line. Actually, I don't know if there are any cones, but there are attacks that follow a linear path across the screen.
Yeah.
And by contrast, like, you know, in Final Fantasy, you either have attacks that are attacking a single character or all character, you know, a single enemy or all enemies, or maybe all characters. The character is just slashing the open air in front of them, and then the damage is applied to the enemy.
Right.
Whereas you select an enemy and the character that's making the attack, and that character will follow a path across the screen to that enemy and execute the attack there. And it's just a little bit of extra visual polish that makes it very satisfying, especially when you start getting things like critical attacks, like when the characters execute. And we'll talk about this more in the visual section, but like the animation makes the fulfillment of those attacks very satisfying.
Yeah. It is just, it's a much more dynamic experience than most games of its time and ilk. And I think that's part of why it holds up so much better from a gameplay perspective, because it at least gives you the feeling of a dynamic, action-packed environment overlaid on, again, what is essentially like a turn-based, menu-based JRPG. And I really like it. It feels much more energetic. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the presentation and kind of the team behind this, because one of the things that I think will strike anybody that's playing Chrono Trigger today in 2024, regardless of what version you've played, and so just for Inside Baseball, my first take on this game was I played the Japanese physical copy of Chrono Trigger on the DS, which is an excellent version of that game, and that one, just for collectors out there, if you get the Japanese version of Chrono Trigger DS, it has the English language text on it. It's one of very few Japanese DS games that does. So look out for that. And it's got a super cool manual that I was showing the guys earlier with a whole bunch of like really cool Toriyama art in it.
It's extremely charming.
Yeah. And then the other version that I've played through is I'm currently playing through the Android port that Square put out recently. And that is based on the DS version. So, so I have played the Super Nintendo version, but the only ones that I've gotten like double-digit hours into are more modern ports and more modern versions. And what I'll say is, even sitting next to games from 10, 15, 20, 30 years later, it still looks real good. And it still sounds incredible. The music in this, in particular, sticks with me.
That's always one of the focus points of conversation around why this game is so good.
Yeah, Benny, I know you had a little bit that you wanted to talk about, just because like we mentioned it obliquely, but
in terms of who was involved in this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because we had one of the weird things about this game is, like I said, this is pre-Square Enix. But this game had heavy hitters from Square, from Enix, from the world of anime, from just like...
So Square called the team that produced this like their dream team.
Yeah.
They pulled people in from IPs all over the JRPG genre in general, and some of the biggest names. And the names may not be significant to most people, but like we've got a designer from Final Fantasy. We've got Akira Toriyama, who everyone ought to know.
Yes. R.I.P.
Exactly. Like,
yeah.
Unfortunate timing on our part here.
Yeah.
I will mention by name Yasunori Mitsuda. We will be talking about him as the composer for this game. His story alone is interesting.
And he's still working. He did some of the music for Sea of Stars, which just came out. It was a huge success.
He did, and he is still knocking out bangers, apparently.
Yeah.
But along with him, the composer for Final Fantasy was involved. And again, when we talk about sound, we'll need to tell that story in brief because it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
We have directors from a number of other Final Fantasy games and creators and producers from like the Dragon Quest series, as you mentioned earlier, and some of these people would also go on to do other stuff like Vagrant Story and like some of the famous JRPG entries on the PlayStation console would be a part to play in this game before they ever got to that. So I mean, like I said, it's not worth spending too much time on, but it's worth noting that it was nothing but talent that built this game.
Absolutely. I do just want to talk a little bit about the art. Obviously, like famously, Akira Toriyama worked on this game. It shows. I mean, like,
from the first split second you look at the box art.
Yeah, and like, it is unfortunate timing. Because it looks obviously like all love to somebody who did some incredible work on incredibly influential art, a giant in this field. It does just look like Dragon Ball art. I mean, let's like to be super clear, like a lot of Toriyama's stuff looked a lot the same, and this looks very much like Dragon Ball.
That's not a bad thing either.
Not a bad thing. It's beautiful. Beautiful art.
Every robot he ever drew looks like Robo does.
Yes.
And they look badass.
Yes.
It's cool as shit.
He also was the best person at drawing dinosaurs ever. And we get that in Chrono Trigger with the reptiles.
And that is fair because like it's hard to draw like many people can make non-human or make human things look human and have recognizable expressions.
Yeah.
It's tough to animate and draw a robot or a dinosaur.
Yeah.
And anthropomorphize it without it being fucking weird.
Yeah.
And this game has that in multiple like encounters from start to finish.
There is a T-Rex style boss about 2/3 of the way through this game that is one of the coolest looking pieces of sprite art I've ever seen. Full stop. When something can jump on screen on a 2-inch wide DS top screen and you jump.
Are you talking about the Black Tyranno?
Yes.
Yeah, it shows up like twice in the game.
The Tyrannosaurus.
Yeah.
And it just that first encounter with it like this game sets up some of the moodiest encounters in these with like the music changes like the mood shifts and you know it and you don't know, the first time through, you don't know what you're encountering, but it just feels like it's going to be significant.
Yeah.
And you're never visually disappointed by what the sound is telling you to expect. I love that.
And just in that fight, I feel like that boss had like a lot more detail put into that dinosaur in specific. Like it really was menacing. Yes. It was really menacing.
She takes up like 2/3 of the screen, and that roar that she does, and it's she's fully animated. So like
Yes.
the dinosaur like kind of like dips and like it's like a full body roar, like that moment in Jurassic Park where like you first get the Tyrannosaurus above the Jeep, just like
100%
screaming, like
well, and 100% that was an influence on this moment, right?
And they animated the mouth opening too and everything. For that.
My god,
yeah.
I guess what I'll say about the art is that if you are somebody who likes modern indie sprite-based games, if you're somebody who, when something like Sea of Stars came out and you're like, oh, this is really cool, like I really liked the look of this, this is why you like that visual aesthetic. Like modern sprite-based games that are emulating a 16-bit aesthetic are emulating kind of this game.
It's really true. You get cascading down from this game. You get like walking cycles for sprites.
Yes.
You get the kind of like you get like that rubber hose kind of like pose, or like the characters like are in battle still like active and like waiting, but they're bouncing on their heels and they're moving and they're active, and everything that comes after, at the very least, the artist was aware of this game, or someone who was aware of this game. You can just see it.
Yeah, and like as somebody who constantly talks about like unnecessary frames of animation in like the great Neo Geo games, or like we were talking about in Vector Man with like some of the cool stuff that Vector Man does, it's not necessary. It's just fun. This game is just chock full of visual charm, and
I'll say.
Oh God, we're going to talk about Ayla, aren't we?
No.
Can we talk about?
Well, we can, but no. Now I never put two and two together with the whole Toriyama thing and talking about the dinosaurs in my notes.
Yeah.
Oh
God.
I wrote down pterosaur titties.
Oh God! Yes, yes.
Because those dinosaurs straight up have moobies, or they're not man boobies; they're dinosaurs, so doobies.
Dinosaur doobies.
Dinosaur boobies, doobies.
Tiny, pixelated boobies.
Yeah, but now I feel really.
Time is circular. We're always going to come back here,
right?
Oh man, that was in my notes, and now I'm like.
and,
like, do I have to feel bad, or
no?
But, talking about like not wasted, but like extra animation and like extra frames and things, not overdoing it, like not making like. So when we talked about Vector Man, his idle animation is cool, not because he's doing a lot, but because he's doing almost nothing.
Right.
And I love this game because it's so. I mean this as kind of a pun, but like if you blink, you missed it. But like if you leave your character sitting long enough, they'll just kind of they'll stand. They're not gonna like tap their toe or be impatient. But there's like 6 pixels keeps them human. The eyes blink. They'll blink at you periodically. They'll just stand and they'll blink, and you can tell they've got in 6 pixels, 9 pixels. Big anime eyes, and they'll blink, and it's just so cute as they're reminding you that the world is still moving on, even though you're not holding the controller.
I just realized something that is so obvious that I never thought about. Because you're like, yeah, you know what Vector Man does? He just kind of lazes about. He doesn't do much. And I'm like, what's Link's big? We were talking about Link's Awakening earlier. What's Link's big thing? He's kind of lazy. He doesn't do much. I'm like, of course, that's the characteristic you give to a character when you want to save on animation cycles.
Mm-hmm. That's really true.
Yeah, you're like, oh yeah, all our heroes are fucking lazy because it's saved on animation frames. Oh, God.
And we want them cartwheeling or picking their fingernails.
Right. No.
Wait, cartwheels are going to cost us $6,000. Picking your fingers is $65. Yeah.
Picking their fingers.
Picking the fingernail.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to add an extra memory chip onto every cartridge if they're active. If they're lazy, we save millions. Oh, God.
God, the podcast always comes back around to marketing decisions and titties.
Yeah.
God, my whole life was a
Oh,
lie.
wait, they're the same thing. God damn it.
Let's talk about the sound of this game. Because
it's got one of the most legendary soundtracks of any game ever, including up till now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
The overworld song for 680 is like another one of those. Yeah, just like it just lives one of those living rent free in my head kind of things. Until like I'll be like just going senile in a hospice care somewhere, and I'll just be humming that to myself someday.
For sure.
The one that always gets to me, particularly because of the really weird instrument choice. Like it's got like, oh my God, what's the little
Like xylophone? Or
yeah,
marimba
xylophone. It's got like a xylophone. There's some like string instruments in the background. The Zeal soundtrack. I was trying to describe one time to Aaron, I was like, because of the limitations of the hardware, because of the number of channels, and because they had to use samples, and because, like just the restrictions that were put on composers in this era, it's kind of like that exercise that every art student goes through of, hey, paint a picture using only 4 colors. And sometimes what comes out is incredible. Sometimes what comes out is far more dynamic and exciting than if you gave them the whole palette. And that Zeal soundtrack was the thing that I pulled. I was like, I want you to listen. This came out like this is like a fucking like very limited like MIDI chip from the 90s putting out like 4 to 6 channels at a time, and it's like, listen to this, just listen to this.
It's so furtive and like anxious, but also whatever that is.
Yeah, that's not from the game. Like,
it's far more exciting than the asshole driving by on a Harley.
But
Jesus.
Yeah, dick. No, I was trying to. While you were talking, I was really working on words that I think, because the Zeal theme in particular is very. It's not even like they're like haunting bits, but like they're also exciting and like kind of like passionate passages of music. And then but like Zeal is so dynamic where it's like it's telling you that there's like something unknowable and there's something but also like dangerous.
Well, and so like sort of like what we were talking about with the Face Shrine in Link's Awakening, how the music cue combined with the plot, because Zeal is such a memorable part of Chrono Trigger for me, and we'll get to the plot, because of the big reveal that happens there. And yeah, I like, it does just genuinely, like, it sticks with me. It sticks with me.
So let's talk about how I want to hear what Kirk had to say, but let me say, like, where the soundtrack comes from, and why the origination is kind of important. Because the guy, like, so Yasunori Mitsuda was the composer of this game.
Yeah.
And he literally almost worked himself to death on this game.
I've heard this.
He was a composer for Square, but working on different properties and wanted more responsibility and a bigger salary. And so he went to his higher ups and I said, well, we're we're making Chrono Trigger. We're making this new game.
Yeah.
This might be a good place to cut your teeth. And he, by all accounts, worked his ass off on this.
Yeah.
And clearly had some sort of wildly artistic vision. Yeah. And was able to engage with the property. And he worked so hard and like sleepless nights that he gave himself an ulcer and had to he gave himself like a dangerous ulcer and had to leave. And what's his name? Nobuo Uematsu from Final Fantasy came in,
right,
and with the help of another composer finished the last track. This also has a colossal soundtrack compared to other games of the time.
Yeah.
It's not just how good the music is, it's how every character has their own theme. Every time period, spoiler alerts, we're going to be time traveling, folks.
Yeah.
Has its own
if
theme.
If Chrono wasn't enough of a spoiler for you.
So like this is literally a labor. It was a labor of love for the guy who composed it. Otherwise, I don't imagine he would have worked himself nearly to the grave.
Yeah.
He's alive and well, and like you said earlier, worked on Sea of Stars. Prolific. If you look at his like wiki fandom page, he's prolific. Worked on JRPGs from then till now. Yeah. But I want to know what you were going to say, Kirk. I'm sorry.
I was on the music. I was just going to remark that like it's funny you guys bring up the Zeal being as complex as it is. Well, I assume you noticed that a lot of the complexity comes from like the era. So if you go to Zeal versus like the 2500 or 25 million BC, like it's very like it's just drums and banging rocks, like so. Zeal being the more complex, that it was very fitting for them to have, like you were saying, like the 6 different basic things going on, channels at once.
No,
whereas 100%.
Like can I tell a personal story about the music as well?
Absolutely.
I love Magus's theme, like the first battle theme, which I almost can't describe because it's so dynamic.
Such strong feelings about Magus. I love him.
Man, when you first try to fight him, it leads in and it's silent, and then the torches start igniting around the circle of the battle of the summoning circle that he's created, and the music starts in quiet and dark and unassuming, and it gets deeper and darker and then kind of kicks into like a more metal kind of. I use that. So my wife loves like spooky stuff and horror themed things, and like kind of moody things are an aesthetic that work for her. I actually proposed to my wife with that as an intro to the setup that I had going in the room at the time. Amazing. So I actually proposed to my wife. She doesn't care a lick for Chrono Trigger other than that it's important to me, but I just as an aside.
That is the most incredible and at the same time the most nerdy thing I've heard.
It really is.
In a while. That's so cool. Oh my god. Yeah. No, I thank you for sharing that. That's amazing.
Before I forgot to share that,
oh my god.
I love that I am also deeply ashamed that I did. I'm actually not, but it's...
No, you shouldn't be. That's great. That's incredible. Okay, so presentation. Obviously visuals were Akira Toriyama, so we're not gonna have a ton bad to say. Soundtrack, he proposed to his wife with it. I just said it's the best 16-bit soundtrack I've ever heard. I don't think we got anything negative to say. Do we want to move on to plot?
They scored this, like, they're orchestral. Like, you can go like listen to concerts of this soundtrack. Like, there are
like that fucker David Wise.
Yeah, that son of a bitch.
Still got it coming.
Yeah, he needs to watch his back.
Don't think we haven't forgotten you.
Yeah.
Just because it hasn't happened yet, David.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's not going.
You don't know that we haven't hunted men.
He's innocently sitting on his couch playing Chrono Trigger and starts breaking out in sweat, looking around his shoulders.
I still love the idea that like one of these days, like the fucking like cops are gonna like bash down my door.
Oh no, we love him.
No, absolutely. and as I said in, God, was that like episode 1?
Yeah,
I was like, aquatic ambience changed my life. So that's still true, David. Still love you, buddy. But yeah, okay. So let's talk about plot a little bit because is this the most complex plot that we've talked about on this show? I think it might be.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I think it also, besides the obvious complexity of time travel and everything, it also moves very quickly.
It does. It doesn't, and like particularly for a JRPG, one of the things that I really liked about this game and its plot is that it didn't. There's no fat on this game.
Yeah,
it is the length that it needed to be to tell the story it wanted to tell, and I really respect that. I mean, like I was just talking about. Like on the last episode, I was talking about Journey and how I really liked the fact that it was 2 hours long. Obviously, I don't have the patience for games that are like 100 hours long. I don't even like TV shows. Like, I like movies. I like things that have a beginning, a middle, and a fucking end. And this game has that. And I really, really respect that.
It doesn't suffer any pacing problems.
No.
No, like they still make it work, even with it moving as quickly. The pacing still, it's functional. Like they'll at least make it make sense to the point where if it moves fast, like you're still on board and you still like know what's going on. Like even early on when you and Marley are doing what I can't remember the boss's name or whatever. But then you get back to the castle, then it's like you're under arrest, you fucking miscreant, and all that. And then you go immediately to like trial, like all that stuff tracks and follows. Like it moves quick, but it works.
Snappy.
Yeah,
it's very snappy. All right, Benny, are you comfortable doing like a plot overview? Because I have not played it nearly as many times.
Yeah. So we open on the character Chrono being woken by his mother and promptly ushered out the door. If you remember to stop and get your allowance money from her, she gives you a little bit of cash to spend.
And if you talk to your cat, the cat
meows adorably. It's the best
God.
cat sound in a game for a long time. She quickly ushers
I love
you.
the pussies in this game. What?
Now, do we need to talk about Isla? Is that what you're going into?
Well, Chrono's mom has some thoughts on Isla as well, but
yeah, we'll get to that.
Mom promptly ushers you out the door and sends you on your way to the Millennial Fair, which is taking place at the, interestingly enough, amazingly enough, the turn of the millennium. You're in the year 1000, and you make your way across the world map to the Millennial Fair.
Right.
And it's fun festivity. There's balloons, there's a robot you can fight, there's a curious old man selling weaponry, and there's a race that you can bet on. You can also cheat and make the most of it.
You can eat someone else's chicken.
That's true. You ought not. It's not going to turn out in your favor if you do.
It won't help you.
But
I do.
There's a kitty that you can. There's another pussy in the game.
There's a little girl that's.
You
get to save this pussy.
Jesus. And then the game ends.
No,
That's it.
Side note, I eat the chicken every fucking time.
Why do you eat the chicken? That nice old man doesn't want you to eat
No,
this
he's
chicken.
up to something.
No. Just because he looks like the jurors in your... Just because he is literally the same character sprite as the people that condemn you to prison doesn't mean he's a bad man.
I think anymore it's just out of habit. The first time I played it, I ate the chicken, and then I think the next playthrough I ate it again on accident because they don't just outright say like that's someone else's chicken. It looks like something you can interact with.
Talk to him, he says, "My wife made me this lunch, and it's my favorite part of the day."
I guess I don't talk to enough people.
Oh God.
No, because it just looks like an interactable item.
It is
so you run up to it, and then you're just like, well, I'm going to press the action button and make the thing happen. And I think like the first 2 times I ever either attempt or just played the game outright, I eat it. So now it's just like, I just do it out of spite.
So I don't want to go too much into detail, because I actually think like this is kind of a fun element of the game. Yeah. So the entire time that you're at the fair, there are actions you can take, not take, and modifications to the way that you're playing the game that are very subtle, that will impact a moment later in the game in fun ways. It's, you know, if you mess anything up here, it's not going to materially impact your game, but it's fun to note how things change at this moment.
It's a choices matter.
So anyway, you're at this fair. I have yet to mention that you are supposed to be meeting your childhood friend Luca,
right?
Who is
I love Luca.
Luca is a wonderful character. She is, I believe you're told like right off the bat that she's an inventor, that she and her father Tabin are presenting their newest invention. It almost seems like it's going to be the highlight of the fair.
Okay, sorry, real quick, because I know so before we had started this, you had mentioned that like one of the things you were curious about was how we all pronounced the character names.
Mm-hmm.
That's clearly Tabin, isn't it?
So I am working off of a like middle school child's memory of how I always pronounce things.
Okay.
But I think Tabin makes sense in my mind, but
Okay. No. Like I just like no, and it's always so interesting to me. It's because like I was like, "Oh yeah, Tabin."
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
well,
sorry.
We talked about was it Merle and then Marley.
Yeah,
like that's another one. So
like I always said Marley, but
I always said Marley.
And I've always said Marl.
And I said Marley, So it's just another one of those things.
Maybe it's okay. So here's I have a working theory.
Is it Magus or Magus?
Oh, it's Magus.
Okay,
I say Magus. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well then, we're all in agreement. It's Magus.
That's strange. Okay, all right. Sorry. Continue. Yeah.
So
doing great. 2 thumbs up.
Oh, thanks, bud. So yeah, we have visited the Millennial Fair to see our friend's science exhibit. Basically, it's by all accounts the
it's 2 potato batteries and then a time travel device.
I mean, how far off are we? Because it's not that far off.
No, that's about right.
So you show up at by all accounts, it's the titular exhibit of the fair. It's like why people are going, like people are excited. Yeah. It almost feels a little bit like Belle and Maurice in like the Beauty and the Beast movie, where everybody thinks like crazy old Maurice, like crazy old Tabin.
Yeah.
But they show up and it's these 2 devices. Excuse me. In the square past Lean's Bell. Yeah. You go past a notably obvious like bell.
Right.
Exposition.
And, I've skipped an important part. So as you're browsing around and moving through the fair, before you ever have the chance to go up to the exhibit, you run into a mysterious blonde girl.
Yes.
You run into her physically, and you both end up on the ground.
Oh my god, we almost did forget about her.
Oh my god, yeah. Well, and I like that. I was like, hey, let's talk about how we pronounce her name, but let's not introduce her or how she get into the story.
And funnily enough, her part is the only part that you can't really affect from the moment later in the game that I'm being kind of deliberately obtuse about, or like obfuscating.
Oh no, that's not true though. Because you can stand in a particular position and she will run into you.
But the Chancellor still presents it the same way.
That's true, but your lawyer... Oh my god, we don't need to get into all this.
Okay.
But there is actually a correct in air quotes way to do it. Yeah.
Oh, is there? Does the or your
your lawyer will overturn what he said?
Okay, I forgot about that. Okay, interesting.
How would you try to throw a football, you nerds?
But so yeah,
you touch
run
grass.
You,
right?
you. Oh god.
So yeah,
No, don't do the touch grass. No, I'm not ready for that. Anyway,
you and Marley run into each other. We'll just we'll use this in the
Marl, like
we'll use this in the meet cute sense, like where you encounter this girl, you both end up bumping into each other. She drops her amulet, you pick it up for her, return it to her,
right,
and then you decide to pal her. She doesn't know anybody. She's a little bit mysterious, but she's looking for someone to experience the fair with.
Yeah,
and so she offers to pal around with you, and you can buy her some cotton candy, and you can explore the fair. And then you can go to the exhibit, and Luca asks for a volunteer to demonstrate their teleportation device that they've created. They have 2 pods, and they demonstrate
it's a Star Trek transport device.
Exactly,
exactly what it is.
It's not like The Fly, although that'd be a cool twist on this game.
God, it's so close. It's so close to happening that way.
It'd be so Kafka-esque.
God.
I'm sorry.
No, that's. I'm just thinking of like Cronenberg.
Cronenberg Trigger.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's amazing. Cronenberg Trigger. Oh shit. Guys, podcast over. We gotta start writing down. Oh God, you're gonna love next week's episode. Holy shit.
Tune in next week where the guys present their script for Cronenberg Trigger.
Oh, Jesus. Can that be like our symbol on all social media? Just like a weird version of Chrono all Cronenberged out?
It's already NC-17.
Oh, God. I'm just picturing like fucking The Fly, like at the end, but with still the red spiky hair coming over.
Yeah.
Dude, like, spoiler alert, but how far off is that from like the final battle? Like,
oh yeah, not that fucking far. Not that fucking far. Okay. So yes, yeah, you have the Luca has the with her dad has the transportation device. You get in, you're transported from one side to the other just fine, and then Marl is so excited by what she's seen that she wants to try, and without any prompting, jumps into the machine and has them throw the switch. Right.
Even to I think Tabin even cautions, or no, Luca cautions, but Tabin is just like going after it.
Yeah, go for it.
And throws the switch and...
Go for it, sexy girl.
That amulet that you find... Wow, I've never thought of Tabin that way before. Now I feel weird about
that. That is absolutely the mental, like, particularly after you meet her mom. I was like, oh yeah, no, Tabin fucking sucks. Like, that's...
Damn it, no, I love him. Damn it, this sucks.
Anyway, continue.
The machine starts interacting with her pendant that you picked up for her.
Right.
And it starts glowing, and the machine is malfunctioning, and electricity's arcing, and shit's going wrong. Everyone's freaking out. Some of the patrons, like some of the attendees, start fleeing. And then a rift promptly opens in space.
Right.
And Marl is sucked into it.
Right.
And like the hero that he is, Chrono pursues her immediately.
Right.
And this is within the first... Well, depending on... You got a couple options. I always spend about 4 hours before this happens because I'm a fucking nerd loser, and I want the load sword, the overly expensive 4,000 gold sword that you can buy at the beginning. But this also can happen within the first like 5 to 10 minutes of you playing the game.
Well, so like Snastrunk was talking about, like, he had some friend when he was a kid who would max level Chrono and Marley against what's the robot's name at the very beginning that you can beat up for a couple bucks?
Gatto.
Yeah. They'd max level against Gatto.
All the music in my brain.
Oh yeah, Gatto's music is great. Gatto's music reminds me of Mystical Ninja. Like, it's got that like
yeah.
Like, it's very like yeah.
he might as well be a J-pop star because he is.
Yes. Okay, yeah. So picture like a robot version of Hestu from Breath of the Wild
Mixed with Hello Kitty.
And super pink.
Super pink. That is absolutely
with Akira Toriyama flair for the aesthetic, and you can almost draw this just from our description.
Yeah. But yeah, so you go back in time
to the year 600,
chasing after Marley.
Yeah.
Or Marl.
Whatever.
But Luca says, I have to stay behind and I have to figure out what's going on, what the fuck's going on. And then I think what we're going to do, actually, guys, because we've been talking for a long time. And we can keep talking about this game, and I love this game. Is I think we're gonna split this into a 2-parter, and we'll come back. We'll finish up the plot a little bit, and then we'll kind of do final thoughts. Do you guys have anything that you want to say before we cut it?
No, just stay tuned because I think we're gonna get to some of the more esoteric and maybe some of the more interesting discussion that we have
for sure
in the next one, because we've mostly talked about the structural, we've talked about the form but not really the function so much yet.
I like that. That's a good point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because to understand this game, you really have to kind of really explain it, because otherwise I don't think our audience would be able to follow it at all. Even if we just try to give just a backseat kind of view of what's going on, it's going to take a while.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, thank you guys for doing the in-person thing again. This was really fun. I'm really excited to be doing the face to face again. The other's fine, but this is clearly better.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you who are listening, for our fan.
Yeah, for all of our fan.
Hey there.
Hey, for all of our fan.
You doing good?
You all right,
eating?
man?
Yeah, how are you doing?
Do we need it? If you need a sandwich,
I have lotion.
I can.
Hey.
Wait. What?
Hey,
what?
fan. I think I'm ready. I'm ready to start trying. Remember to hit that like button.
If you want to hit Kirk's like button,
but be real careful about it.
No, hit it hard.
Please follow us on all the social media channels: YouTube, Spotify.
Hit Kirk's Discord channel. Yeah. His OnlyFans. Okay, I'm done. All right, we love you guys. Bye.
God damn. I'm pretty sure I have, but I'm having a lot of trouble.
The weapon of choice music video, and he does this for some reason.
Or you can go with that, or you can go with this,
and you can go with that.
I know I've seen it. I was having a hard time visualizing it.
Sorry.
That's going in. That's in the podcast.
That can be the closeout.
Weapon of choice.
Okay. Where the fuck were we? Okay.